The Bridgesburn podcast is brought to you by Youth Bar, Halifax's home for science-driven aesthetics and care you can trust.
Their expert team delivers natural results with personalized care in a friendly, welcoming environment.
As a Bridgesburn podcast listener, you're invited to use the exclusive code Bridgesburn for special pricing on your first Botox or filler treatment or one of their other many services.
You can follow at Youth Bar HFX on Instagram to check them out and book your visit today.
This is Bridgesburned with Megan and Amy.
Sarah Burke is the CEO and founder of the Women in Media Network. She's been in the industry for 15 years and realized there was a need for a platform where women's voices come first.
Not only is she the CEO, she hosts the Women in Media podcast and is a co-host and producer for the award-winning Jann Arden podcast as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Sarah.
You're so welcome. And you are part of the Women in Media Network now, so...
We are. Well, that's what we were going to say. We're so excited because now we're part of the network as well.
So yeah, like the network is, I don't think a lot of people realize because there's, you know, a concept of like a podcast network being like, you have to be recruited and and there's lots of exchanges of money. And it's like, I'm really just trying to help people develop some best
I mean, we kind of were a little bit like, we came to you first and asked if we could interview you. Yeah. And then it just didn't work out for a while. But then you were looking at our stories and we're like, can I help you guys? And we were like, yes. So you kind of did recruit us a little bit, sort of.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you guys like made me pay attention to what you were up to. And I was just like, oh, there's an easier way. Let me tell you. Right. Like,
thank you for the easier way. I should have. With all your knowledge you have, let's take it back. What was it about media that you were interested in and wanted to start a career?
Oh, I grew up in Toronto, and like the big radio station that I loved the music of, it started with music for me, rock music, was 102.1 The Edge. And, you know, just, I didn't even know if I had that in me, but following along with the radio station, I loved writing. Writing was my first love. I went to Carleton for journalism. It didn't work out. Spoiler alert. And I dropped out. Yeah. Like taking something from inside you and presenting it to the world, whether it's writing or telling stories on the radio or on a podcast. I was always like a little performer too. Like I did dance and theater and all that kind of stuff. My mom was probably like, this kid needs to shut up.
I think all of our mothers felt that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was always that kid that was like talking too much in class. I mean, I feel like that's a thread with most of us in this industry. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I still always had this like imposter syndrome thing of, I don't know if I would ever be able to turn this into something. I knew I wanted to perform, but I just never really, I didn't really take it seriously until I got a mic in front of my face.
And so you had an incredible career. You were on terrestrial FM, but then you got a job at Sirius XM doing programming for the music. What was the difference between terrestrial and Sirius, especially at that time?
I mean, the big difference was I went from being mostly a personality to station strategy behind the scenes. And I think my time at Sirius really gave me, I had a lot of programming experience. I was really lucky in terrestrial radio. So I was always like working closely with music directors on feature programming within my show. Like I was probably the most annoying afternoon drive host on a rock station ever, because like I'd be going to the music director and being like, I want to do this thing. It requires me to play these like songs. I'm going to get the listeners to give feedback. And he'd be like, you need to submit the songs ahead of time. Like, stop. Like, you know, but I was given a lot of free reign. I broke it down. And because I always participated in music meetings and had like a good feel for what the station direction was, I got some trust that I don't think other afternoon drive hosts would. So going into Sirius, you know, it was about music programming, but like radio, you're waiting for these almost archaic, I mean, if you're not in a major market, which is PPM ratings, and, you know, you have the little devices that just follow around the frequency for, you know, London, Ontario, which is where I started my career, in Kingston, Ontario. You're waiting for like people to fill out like a written little diary of what they were listening to. And I don't know if you know much about the male brain, but I don't know how much goes from their brain actually onto the paper. They're probably like, I was listening to Top 40 and they didn't even know they were listening to a station playing Aussie. Like I don't know. So I think what was really cool at the beginning of Sirius was like, I could see how much data we had available to us. And like, this is where algorithms and trends, even in social media, like this is all happening at the same time behind the scenes in playlisting as well. Like if you were to look at like iHeartRadio and their app and some of the algorithms behind the scenes, it's similar, right? They're taking like what is trending and how can we bring that into an offering? And that's not a good thing because, music programmers were humans before, but it's that finding that way to like bring in the trends, but also keep it human and exciting and having a craft. There's a famous music director here in Toronto who's worked at Boom for most of his professional career, like as of late, just retired. And like, I think they split that man's role into 3.
Oh, wow.
What he, because it's like you have to also do this, this, and this, but like he was so good at what he did and all he had to worry about was music. So did I get to still do personality driven things like host at award shows and red carpets and go to music festivals to interview people? Yes. But those things were like few and far between. It was mostly behind the scenes. That was a bit of an adjustment for me, for sure.
Is there less rules? It's
More.
serious? Or really like CanCon and percentage and really?
So
That's interesting to me.
I had to play, I think it was 25% new music, which had a date within the last 6 months. Not an easy thing to track because like a song that comes out today is not going to be new, 6 months from now. But that means you have to know when it, like the original date was. So you have to always like be updating your music library like that.
Mm-hmm.
So 25% new. We had a 9-to-1 channel ratio. So for every American channel, which obviously there's really popular channels, of course you want to carry as many as you can because that'll be like big listenership.
Yeah.
We had to produce 1 Canadian channel for each 9 American. Emerging content. Now some radio licenses do have emerging with their license, but it basically meant that like 40% had to be from up and coming artists that had not charted. And at the point when they start charting, there's an expiry date coming, which again, you have to like update in your logs. So yeah, that was a big learning and probably the most frustrating part of my job. A lot of time was spent on maintaining all of that.
Wow. Yeah. This seems like a lot.
Yeah.
So you resigned from your position as the manager of Canadian music programming in 2022. Was that a difficult decision for you?
Yeah. I love the word resigned. It sounds so like calm, but it was like chaos. And when I talk to my best friends about this or my family, it's like, I fucking quit. Right? Like that's what it was. And like you guys, these 2 were on my podcast and you just get so sick of how you're being treated and the repetition, the cycle. And I had actually taken a leave of absence to try and figure some of that out. My outside of, the maintenance of the music stuff, which is part of the job, right? That's skills-based stuff. But a lot of my energy was being depleted managing the people above me. I had a team. I had a team of people below me who reported to me. And although like, I was a new manager and I had lots to learn in that space, it was much harder managing the personalities above me. My first day of work, my manager says to me, if this guy ever comes to your desk, you stop what you're doing and whatever he needs is the priority.
Wow.
And that's the VP at the time of programming. And I go, okay, well, my boss wasn't around a lot. And I've made comments about what he might have been up to or doing that made him not around a lot. But during that time, VP relied heavily on me.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wasn't trying to steal anyone's job. I was in the right place at the right time and qualified.
Yeah.
And so I got really tired of managing the emotions of my boss who was feeling slighted, but he was doing this to himself.
Right.
And I would even say things like to my VP, like when he would invite me to a meeting to work on something together. And I did have some responsibilities that were like very nuanced in the radio world of like satellite radio in managing those quotas that I was talking about. So whenever the American team was working on something, I was sort of managing how we would do it in Canada to like bring the new content in.
Yeah.
And so that gave me a lot of touch points with the American team. And I think my boss started feeling like he was losing power, control, and didn't know everything going on that he maybe should have. So yeah, I remember saying to my VP, it would make my life easier if you could invite my boss to this meeting so he doesn't feel a certain way.
Do you think he was feeling like that because you are a woman as well? Like he thought that you just knew more than him and you were being treated differently and he didn't like that?
I think he was scared of losing his own job and like not understanding or knowing enough about what he should have been an expert at.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because when I came in, he kind of like let that go. He was like, this is your thing now. I remember him and another woman from a different team were sort of like, the two of them were in charge of these things that suddenly landed. Like I got hired to be a programmer. So I thought I was coming in. Here are the 3 stations that you're going to be programming and maybe hosting a little radio show on. So like a couple months in, I'm like on these calls with the American team. I'm like, what is happening? Right? Like I used to show up for work at 1 p.m. and do my 2 p.m. rock radio show. And like, so that's a learning curve. But yeah, I just think that like he was relieved to have someone to manage this hard stuff that required a lot of maintenance and time. And then he like checked out. And that unfortunately made me a threat to him.
Was there like a day that, because I feel like this happened to me, like for so long, I was like, I can never leave radio. I love radio. And I just thought it was the be all end all. And then like one day, just something happened and it snapped in my head. I was like, I am done.
Oh yeah.
Done.
I told you, I took this leave of absence, and during the leave of absence, which I was just using it as like a collect my thoughts because I was angry type of absence. Not to mention my health was fucked. Like I stopped getting my period. Like I was stressed.
Right.
And so I thought it was warranted. I spoke to my doctor. She said, yeah, let's get you a doctor's note here. Like there was no question that I was faking anything here.
Right.
But I remember the VP called me and he was like, what would it take for you? Like, what are you looking for when you come back from this leave? Like, what is it that, and I said, well, you know, you have me doing a lot of work for you, but I don't report to you. And that is the tension here. And, you know, if I wasn't even asking for a promotion, I was like, maybe we need to talk about creating a job title that makes more sense. Like I was being paid well at this time, to be honest, too, but I was not being paid as someone reporting to the VP, I will say.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, money has never really been like a thing here. Like, sure, if you get offered a job somewhere else and you can negotiate, great, as you should, because you're valuable. But that's, you know, that's the bottom line there. This was about the extra energy I had to waste to just do my job. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back, an email went out making basically a guy that you guys would understand this as like a broadcast technician. So someone who was on site to set up all your tech if you had a live broadcast, manage equipment, all that kind of stuff. That person became my boss after this instead of someone who had several years in the music industry. And this is where I think the company did us a disservice, both me and my boss.
Yeah.
Because a role could have been created that like fills in some of the gaps in support of both of these different things. But then you have the broadcast technician guy being like, can you introduce me to so-and-so from Universal? And it's like, my God. And I'm here like, do you want me to like roll this wire for you? Like, does that help you here?
Yeah.
And the second boss, although he was only my boss for the last 6 months, because this is where I'm getting to the moment where I knew it was fucking done.
Mm-hmm.
He was way worse than the other guy. The other guy, I could see it was a product of the environment, and there were still things wrong there with his behavior, but it was a product of the environment and what was going on above. This next guy was a control freak, and the second that he felt like he didn't have control over me, he was acting out. Like there were several times on Zoom meetings where like I was like, oh, I maybe should record this because he's like screaming at me right now. It was pandemic, and so I would do the polite way, sending an email after, I don't appreciate you speaking to me like this, and we're going to have to work together, and da-da-da-da-da. But all of this behavior came out of him feeling like he doesn't...
Inadequate.
Yeah, inadequate.
Yeah.
So yeah, they put out this email announcing that I now report to this guy and then the other guy. It read like these two both got promoted. And Sarah will continue to report da-da-da, but over here now. And that, when I read that email, I was like, okay, how many days here? Yeah. And when I say this was a job I loved, like I loved it so much. I was obsessed with my job. I didn't want to leave my job. I just knew that my health, my capacity as like a human mentally was maxed. And that is why I made that decision. I didn't even have another job lined up. Do you know how scary that is to like just decide?
Yeah, I do.
To decide to walk away from a job you love because you just can't see it getting any better. And Amy, you talked about like going away. Yeah. I remember I wanted to be good to my team. We had a lot of projects on the go, the people who reported to me. So I gave 30 days notice, and I had like some vacation booked at the time, like ski vacation, Blue Mountain here in Ontario. So I go away for the 3 days, and I've filled out, like I've requested an exit interview at this point. And I get invited to a meeting on the Friday morning. I'm coming back at the end of the week. The first 3 days I was like out. And I'm like, I knew instinctively, save all your shit tonight. Like I knew, I could see, because it was like, it's supposed to be, it was like a bait, like come to your exit interview you requested.
Yeah.
So I go to the exit interview, and I don't know if this is normal. I don't have a lot of corporate experience, but the problem was in the meeting. So the HR person and my boss. I don't know if that's kosher. I don't know. Is it?
I've never had an exit interview. I wasn't in that.
I had an exit interview, and it was just me and the GM.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing came up about the 12-page thing I had to fill out, like the survey. And it was to let me know during that meeting that I would be locked out of everything.
Oh my God.
And
would you like to do that?
Yeah. And confidential. Okay. Let me also just say, I've spent enough time in media that I understand that piece, like because of confidentiality and the things she has access to, we're going to have to lock it out. But I believe, especially knowing some stories that have come out of that environment over the last 6 months, that it was the boss's decision, because I know other people who have quit recently who have also had problems with certain things in the environment, and they're being let to work until January. So it really does come down to the manager's say, I think, and how it goes down in this building anyway. And I think that it was like, no, I'm threatened by her. I want her out. Like that simple. And I should have also known, because that VP sent me a message before I was heading into the meeting. It was like an email that was like he knew I quit. I forwarded my resignation letter to him as well. I wanted it to come from me because I had worked so closely with him, who I also now realize is a huge enabler, this man, even though at that time I was like, oh, he's like the only one I care about saying goodbye to. He sent me an email right before I went into the meeting. Obviously, he knew that he was going to not have access to email me after that.
Yeah.
And it was like, you should be so proud of everything you've accomplished. And he played the whole like dad figure at work thing, which was also fucking abusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how many times he said to me, well, my daughter, da-da-da-da-da. Like he would like put me in this bucket with his daughter. I'm like, you're fucking creepy.
Yeah.
But at that time, because of all the other behaviors around me, that was like somehow supportive at that time. Now I see it very differently. Like, when you spend time away from it, you're like, oh, that was fucked. And that was
Hindsight.
Yeah. So those moments were when you put a guy who rolls cables in charge of me right now and in charge of the programming on these channels. Tell me about his programming experience.
Yeah.
I'm out.
I feel like you and I have very similar stories. And something I think of often is when you're talking about your health, I was in and out of hospitals. I had to get MRIs. I was figuring stuff out. Nothing over serious, just trying to figure out why. But I really think it was my job making me sick and the stress. My face, like all the hormones, like I was broken out like I was a 14-year-old boy. Like my voice was cracking. Like I just looked unwell. I had listeners being like, is Amy okay? And I look back and I'm like, I wonder what would have been if I had taken a leave of absence and if I had just taken that time to myself. But then at the end of the day, that manager would have still been there, just very, didn't know what he was doing. I think he felt threatened. And if you ever very micromanagey, and if you ever told him that he wasn't doing something right, well, then he'd flip it on you and figure out what you weren't doing right.
I remember thinking the same thing. Like, and I was considered freelance. So I actually did not have any full-time benefits whatsoever. And I remember thinking all I want, and I worked more full-time announcer hours than any other announcer at the station. And I remember thinking, all I want to do is sit in I felt like I wanted to sit in a psychiatric ward by myself and just be quiet for like a week and not have anyone talk to me and just heal my brain, because I felt like I couldn't do it at all. Yeah. That's all I wanted was a minute, and I couldn't do that. Hence why I was psychotic again.
My leave was not, also be kinder to yourself. You're not psychotic. We're products of these environments.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, my leave was like 2 weeks. Like I wasn't trying to like, get paid on company dime and do nothing for 6 weeks, or, there's a lot of misconceptions about that type of thing. It was like to gather my thoughts and be like, is there a way that I can still work here? Because I loved the job that much. Yeah. So I was like trying to buy myself time to figure it out, and then came to the realization very quickly. I got
That's how you'll stay in it so long, because we love the job truly, but we're like, our dream job has become our nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, sadly, it's mostly from, I always feel like it. If you have great support system and great managers and great leaders, that makes all the difference. But when you're picking up extra slack, or somebody doesn't know what they're doing and they're not coaching you properly or doing this, then it always comes back on you, and that you're not doing well enough. And then sadly, people either get fired for speaking up or not doing what they thought, or have to walk away from a job they really liked.
Sometimes I think about like the opportunity to have a conversation with the last boss I don't give a fuck about, and I hope he gets what's coming for him. But the boss before him, I sometimes think about how it might be if we could have a discussion, because I think with all of these very sensitive topics, especially what women specifically go through in these environments, it's the same thing I would almost say about like my parents' generation. There were things that went then that just don't go now anymore. And a lot of these guys have come up in an industry that's been historically like that. They don't know any better. And the guys I truly respect are the guys that can take that moment. We talked about this on my podcast, but like where you can feel a little remorse for something we all need to be able to look in the mirror sometimes and say, that was shitty of me.
Yeah.
Right? Like women or men. But if you're not willing to see that in yourself, then anyone you manage, like I give so much kudos to my last boss in terrestrial radio. And when I quit that job too, and I was furious on my way out, but he like took the time to sit and hear the why from me, and like was very like curious and interested to hear me out. And of course, like one of the first record label dinners that I was invited to in the new job at Sirius XM, I sat across from him, right? Because bridges burned, like you don't want to burn those bridges. But I remember him being like, is there anything I can do? And I was like, no, this is done. I got another job. Like you can't even make me a fucking offer. I've accepted and I don't care. I'm out. And we now have like a really great friendship. And I think it's because even though there were lots of things wrong in that environment too, and I was also so much younger, I really respect how he took the time to listen to, like, I think he's a better boss now.
Yeah. I always say people are like technology. We're just getting bigger and better. And you either learn, accept, and grow with it, or you stay DOS. And
you're stuck in MS-DOS. You're stuck. Yeah. You're stuck in, wait, what? You're stuck in Selector. There's a music.
Exactly. Yeah. Selector. Yeah. Thought system. So all of those things, you really need those people that are going to keep growing with the technology and the times. And if you're not going to succeed.
He recently got sober, and like we were just catching up, and also like sobriety is an interesting thing in this industry.
Yeah.
But he even still, all these years later, I thought it was so decent. Like he said, this problem that I had to deal with contributed to how I treated my team back then. And I can see how this created an environment with all the things that you said. Like there were times where all these announcers were like against each other, butting heads, because we weren't a team. We were all like begging for attention from our boss, who was out to lunch and, not paying attention to any shit going on in his own world. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's nice when people can actually talk about that stuff and admit it down the road.
Absolutely.
I'd be interested to see who we can do that with. Because although we're just burning bridges, I don't think we've ever come in contact with anybody like you have after burning the bridge. So that would be interesting to me.
Ooh, season 2.
Yeah. And although you might think at the time that you're burning the bridge, like maybe you're not, right?
Yeah, maybe not.
I mean, I find it really interesting that we've done season 1 and I've had not only the manager of my past job, but the HR guy being like, we love the podcast, keep going. And I'm like, oh my God, the HR guy who was there when I got fired is telling me he's like proud of me. So I'm like, I feel validated.
I've just had the guy that was there when I got fired ask me out on a date. That's all I've had.
Megan has stories for days where you're like, how is that real life?
I don't even know how my life is real life most of the time. So yeah, it's pretty messed up. We'll talk about it some other day.
Yeah.
Now here you are, own your own company, Women in Media. How did that come to be?
Well, having absolutely nothing lined up, going to like midday workout classes with the moms after their kid drop off and just doing a little soul searching for a few months. Projects started falling in my lap. People wanted to have me produce them or have me project manage. And so I followed that. I was like, okay, something's working here. And that's probably from my leadership that I learned in the SiriusXM environment as well. Especially when there's lots of moving parts and you're managing talent. Like sometimes I feel, even like Jann Arden, for an example, I had kept in touch with a program director in iHeart in Bell Media, who just like the second that this like maternity leave came up to co-host on the Jann Arden podcast, she was like, I thought of you right away. Like, do you think that this might be something you're interested in? So these things were just like, the universe kind of took care of me in a way. But it's not because I was lucky. It's because I had made those impressions on people as I was networking in the industry like the whole time. So, I mean, Jann was a big one. I got a few other gigs out of Bell and working with that team, which was really nice for a period of time. But the same sort of red tape in radio, which, you know, there's so much red tape in those contracts and how your IP, like owning your own IP, how important it is. And I learned so much in that year that I wanted to help other people who might have a bad contract. But
or no contract.
No contract, yeah.
or no contract, right? And even in my first year of business, there were times where I didn't have contracts with people and it came out to burn me. So lots of lessons learned there in running your own company. But I just want to help people tell stories better. And it doesn't matter how high profile or not you are. Like, you know, I will say I have like new clients that are coming on, and when they're pickier to work with than someone like Jann Arden, who has a much bigger public image to maintain and more things to be worried about with how something's produced, I'm always using that as a standard of like, if Jann trusts me, you can trust me, you know? So that's sort of like part of, I think, the beauty of this gap in the industry. You know, at first I was like, oh, I'm competing with SiriusXM and iHeartRadio in this way because I'm offering the ownership of your IP, and that might be more exciting to someone than like signing on with Bell and having Bell own half of you, you know? But it's quickly become, and this has only become clear to me in the last year, that I am probably meant to work with creators that are not all of Jann Arden level. I'm capable of it, but it's helping people from the beginning and from scratch who are developing a podcast is probably my sweet spot.
Do you know what I find very interesting is we talked to about a dozen different women who are either still in media another way or have started their own business once being out. And I find that very interesting. That's something I've taken away, that men who are fired or out of the business either become car salesmen or get into real estate or we didn't even like practice that, but it's so true. But these women have all started their own businesses, or they're doing something
creative journeys.
Exactly. And I find that beautiful that women are like, okay, well, what's next?
Kind of like
I want to do it my way.
We are always supposed to plan our own and have control of our own careers. They just don't know how to do it unless there's a boss.
Yeah, no, exactly. And women need to realize they can be their own bosses and they can trust their instinct. And this is about like leaning into that feminine thing, even though I was operating in such like a masculine energy for so many years. You know, when you lean into the feminine and flow, and you will be surprised at what you find.
Yeah. We get shit done.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Are you happier now being your own boss and running things the way that you know work well?
Yes. Is there still lots to learn? 100%. Right? I can see both sides of it. But like overall, I am so much happier. I like that I know what I have to work on for the day, for the week. It's not stuck in approvals in someone else's inbox while I wait to try and make the best of the time I have. And then it's all going to be like at the end of the week, like fury to get things done because it's been 5 days since you engaged in conversation with me. I had to like chase one of my bosses for like, can you take a look at that, please? I'm waiting to produce it. Like,
Yeah.
So I love that part of it. But, it is not easy owning your own company.
Plus you're working like 24/7, right? When it's your own company, it's not just the 9 to 5 or whatever the hours are.
Yeah. So, and project management, which is really what this network is at the end of the day, if you like pull away some of the, bells and whistles, everyone likes to work differently, but that is something I'm also grateful for, to be able to work in like so many different workflows and production processes. Whatever works over here might not work over here. And I have the flexibility to figure that out with each client. So,
yeah. What do you hope for women in media 5 years down the line?
Bridgesburn is your number one podcast, obviously.
Well, heads away from Jann.
Yeah.
Well, no.
No, honestly, I'm going to bring it back to like Jen Valentine, who we talked about this a little bit on my podcast, and you guys will have to listen to that. But Jen Valentine is, someone who's put her very painful story of, bullying and management enabling things that are completely unacceptable in a broadcasting environment. And she's doing that for the future of women, so that when these things come up, anyone involved, whether you're on the side of like things management, okay, or you're the person who's like lodging a complaint, everyone will be on the same page to understand it's wrong versus this dance. I think my hope for the future is that the dance is over. It's either wrong or it's not.
Yeah.
Right? And the clarity that we're going to get from people sharing their stories on your podcast, in court, for a human rights tribunal, on my podcast, the more we talk about all this shit, the less people get away with it.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I hope they also normalize that women have a voice, because I think generations before us really had to play in the boys' club and stay quiet. But, when there's jokes being done on the radio that are not funny anymore, they're just not funny, to be like, that's not funny, instead of sitting there giggling uncomfortably. I think, again, it's the evolution and all moving forward, and hopefully seeing that there is some value in having strong women on your team.
And I would like to think that an all-male morning show in 2025 or 2026 understands and knows that they have to do better than talking about a woman's breasts on air.
Yep. Yeah. That's pretty sick.
Mic drop. That's it. So simple.
Yeah. Like if that's your award-winning content, dudes, you got so far to go.
Yeah. Thank you so much for chatting with us, Sarah. We're so excited to work with you.
Yeah. Let's get your podcast to more ears. And like I said, like for anyone interested in podcasting, you don't know what you have to say until you sit with it. So I think you guys have done a lot of sitting with it. And now you're ready to rock. Let's do it.
Yeah. We're ready. We're ready.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.